Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dan Barson, your host for this afternoon's AIADA AutoTalk session. Before I introduce today's guest speaker, let me pass on a little bit of information that many of us heard back in Washington, D.C. last week from a presentation from Jason Dorsey. This was held at the AIADA Automotive Summit. Jason is a specialist and is on the speaker tour and has various books out. The latest one is Why Size Your Business, and he is an expert in the millennials. He's also a Gen Y or a millennial himself. He passed on a little bit of information, and I'd like to just share this with everybody on the call. The millennials are generally the ages, they fall in that age group of 20 to 37 years old. Their numbers, depending upon the estimates, are anywhere from 80 to 90 million folks. They are the most diverse group in U.S. history. They also have the highest level of college graduates. The really interesting perspective is that they are running generally 3 to 5 years behind the baby boomers at the same point in their life. One important statistic, they view adulthood starting at roughly the age of 30. And what this means for all of us on the call is they're getting married later, they're having families later, but the most important thing is they're purchasing new cars later. And as a result, they haven't established a lot of loyalty in the marketplace yet. But to that point, though, they also have the greatest lifetime value moving forward. Another important statistic that he shared with us, by the year 2017, this group, the millennials, will outspend the baby boomers in the marketplace. Most baby boomers are looking to downsize, and right now the millennials are getting married, having families, so they're investing and building households. This group has often been said that they're tech savvy, but that really doesn't describe them. This group is more tech dependent, and there's a big difference there. They depend upon that smartphone on their iPad. They absolutely depend upon those items for their daily life. Now, before I introduce Jason Berry of DealerTrack, let me make two additional points. If there's any questions as we move through today's presentation, feel free to use that function in the bottom right-hand portion of your screen. And at the end of today's presentation, Jason will address those questions. Also, we have several additional announcements on upcoming programming, and we'd like to share those with you before we all depart today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Berry of DealerTrack. Jason?
Great. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate the introduction, and thanks to the AIADA for hosting this session and including me. It's an honor. So what we're going to be doing in the next 20 or so minutes is going through some specific conversations, and I'm going to advance the slide here. Let's move this right along. There we go. So we're going to be talking about some specific trends associated with millennials. And before I jump into the details, let me do a quick introduction of myself. Again, Jason Berry with DealerTrack. I've been with DealerTrack for about 10 years, working closely with dealers, lenders, manufacturers, and many of our partners in the industry across the U.S. So again, it's a pleasure joining you here. Over the next 15 or 20 minutes, we're going to be talking about a series of details associated with millennials. We're going to start with some data. We're going to get into what today's experience is, talk about some of the journey aspects of how dealers are supporting a better, more improved experience in the vehicle research and shopping and service process for millennials, and talk about some best practices and tips that you could take back to your dealership and incorporate at a strategic as well as tactical level. So let's talk about that profile of, and Dan mentioned it beforehand, and the stats are pretty enormous here, and we'll talk about the baseline. So who's a millennial? Very simply, someone who was born between 1980 and 2000. And I'm from New York City, so you think about these folks are just wee tykes for when the Mets beat up on the Red Sox in the '86 World Series. So my apologies ahead of time to all of our Red Sox fans. So if you look at that base, you look at the population of the millennials, there's over 92 million millennials, and it's the largest generation in U.S. history. So think of the buying power, and think of where Dan was talking about beforehand of their time in which they, quote-unquote, perceive reality of adulthood. And we're going to see a tsunami of activity in the coming years when they enter into the period of wanting to purchase a vehicle or multiple vehicles. So let's get into the details here. This is a very impactful slide. I've used this in a lot of presentations in 20 groups. It was presented by Goldman Sachs earlier this year. The key tone here and the key theme is must-haves aren't as important for this generation comparative to prior generations. And think about the car. 30% of millennials do not intend to purchase a vehicle in the near future. And that's astounding. If you think about the passion, the energy, the emotion connected with that first vehicle, either you're graduating high school, graduating college, you're entering the workforce, that typically was the mainstay and a significant asset of a consumer. And concerns, of course, right, of 30% of that population is stating they don't see a vehicle purchase in the near future. So the opportunity is here. How do we look at the other 70%? How do we maximize sales opportunities with that group? And how do we potentially carve out part of that 30% that feel that they're not in a position to purchase or don't want to? So before we jump deep in the auto space, let me give a quick anecdote around Whole Foods. And it's an interesting concept that Whole Foods, like I said, I'm from New York, and there's Whole Foods throughout the tri-state area here in New York. They're launching a new concept. And you see the headline here of these cheaper stores targeting millennials. And what's intriguing here is not the cheaper store, but the intriguing part is the experience they're looking to build for the millennial. And specifically, there's two items that they're doing to incorporate within this new retail experience. One is a series of social media flash sales. So social media flash sale, in essence, is helping to extend and build a relationship with millennials through social media platforms to inform of new products that are coming in, flash sales, let's say, within an hour or 5 hours to come in, special offers. And they're also introducing digital ordering kiosks throughout the store. So, for example, putting a kiosk near the asparagus and giving an opportunity for someone to watch a video demonstration on cooking or pairings of food and drink. So trying to create a more interactive experience for that millennial. And again, that's how millennials are looking at leveraging technology to absorb information to make, whether it's a bag of asparagus all the way through a TV purchase, a vehicle purchase, and everything else in between. So let's shift now a bit. Let's talk about today's experience. And the numbers are, there's a lot of information on the slide. The key theme here is the millennials' patience with the traditional process of purchasing and financing a vehicle is really running thin. And some pretty amazing stats here if you look at it. In the middle, the waiting to test drive a vehicle, that 23% are not willing to wait more than 10 minutes. So think about that. You have a busy day on a Saturday, lots of ups walking in the door, and 10 minutes is the go, no-go mark for someone wanting to stick around for a test drive. Not a lot of time. Consistent theme with processing of financing paperwork and the registration paperwork as well. So time is of the essence, and it's not a matter of speed just for speed at each of our dealerships, but having a good experience and tying in the experience of the online to in-store workflow the consumer is going through. And we'll talk a little bit about that online to in-store workflow next. So in summary, for this introduction part, it's about time, convenience, and the deal. We need to look at opportunities to sell the way a millennial wants to be sold, all while gaining more loyalty and making more money, making higher profits, consistently moving forward. How do we continue that moving forward with our full book of business? So the journey. So let's look at the left and the right side. The left side of the screen very simply depicts what today's journey is for a millennial or general consumer that's in the position of looking to buy a car. So it's a very controlling process. It's tedious. It's not exactly the most comfortable experience, and it takes a lot of time. And many progressive dealers are looking at ways to transform this experience by leveraging improved process as well as technology to speed up the process, to be more transparent, to make it an enjoyable process. This is the second largest asset someone will purchase in their life, second behind a house. So how do we make that an enjoyable experience? And you look at the speed. Part of what we're going to talk about here in the next 10 or so minutes is it's not just about speed, but it's about the quality of that experience in the showroom. Let me give you a quick stat here. On average, consumers are spending about 18 hours doing research before they even walk into a showroom. The number one source is online, and one of the top sources of that online experience is at the dealership's website. So what could you and what could your fellow dealers do to improve the online experience, bring more of the F&I and sales process onto your website, and create a better, more transparent, and faster experience once that consumer is in your showroom? So a couple of tips here and a couple of examples. The first thing is empowerment. So how could you empower a millennial throughout the shopping experience and making it easier for them to find information? So a key part of that is building trust through transparency. So many research findings, and look at each of our own individual experiences. As a company is engaging, wants to do business with you, as they share information earlier in that process, traditionally you're building a relationship and you're building trust with that organization. So as you and your dealership can bring downstream with controls for you to maintain your profits and maintain the structure of that deal, to be able to bring more of that process online, to be able to present payment options, trade-in options, and other variables earlier on your website to be more efficient moving forward. Next is keep them online. So keep them on your site. Don't give them a reason to jump to your competitor's site nor a third-party platform. And then from there, conversion, right? It's all about conversion. The eyeballs on your site are great, but unless you convert them to actual customers and ups that are walking into your showroom, it's all for naught. And lastly, time in store. We made mention of that beforehand. It's about the quality. It's not just about speed, but it's about the quality of time that that consumer, the millennial, is spending within your dealership. Busy slide here, but it tells a very interesting story. Let's look on the left. Part of what we talk about in the 1990s is it was about the information age, right? Lots of information being shared. And part of the experience on a dealer's website was what I'll call fairly flat. You have a website, you have inventory listed, maybe, right? You have information, a picture of your dealership, a phone number, maybe an email address in the late 90s. And part of the experience of what we are shifting into a generation of what we call digital retailing. And really very simply what that means is consumers are looking for a more interactive experience to build vehicles, to be able to configure those vehicles. And it's not just the vehicle itself, but the structure around that deal as well. So to be able to match payments and other variables associated with that vehicle are critical to be able to garner the attention of the millennial today. Let me give you a very interesting stat here. Today, on average, consumers are spending or going to an average of 1.4 physical dealerships to make a vehicle purchase. That number was 5 physical dealerships about 8 years ago. So that's a pretty drastic drop. Where is that coming from? Well, consumers are making a decision as to which dealerships they want to do business with based upon their online experience, based upon the research and their social media experience moving forward. So what's critical is you're offering a more engaging experience. You're creating a better use of time online comparative to your competition to give that consumer a better experience. So in summary of this next section here, talk about a series of secrets, right? It's about technology aligned with the process. And it's that process that's recognizing that a consumer just doesn't drop in your lap. when they walk into your showroom. They're doing their research online. There's a reason that they're at your store. You know, I talk with a very good friend who's a former dealer, and he has a consulting firm. He makes a great point that there is no such thing as an internet lead anymore, because the reality is everybody's been online, and everybody's doing their research. So to classify someone as an internet lead, what I call is so 1997. So how could we then transform and execute to then support a better workflow and a better experience? And what we're going to do here in the next 5 minutes is give you a couple of examples of what we mean and demonstrate how an ideal and optimal workflow can be aligned with technology to be able to create a better experience for a millennial. So the first step, let's say that our customer selected a Nissan Altima and was interested in the car. Maybe one of his friends was interested in the car, and we're going to jump in and go through that experience. So the first step is calibrating the right digital marketing campaign associated with that vehicle. So as a dealership, where am I marketing? How do I use my own data to be able to understand what the trends are associated with where traffic's coming in, where there's interest in specific vehicles, and how do I most effectively get to the right target market? And then once you've identified those baseline points, creating the right assets associated with the campaign that I'm looking to communicate. So the right message, whether that's a monthly payment or it's a specific theme or feature that I'm looking to promote. A key point, I talk to dealers a lot about this detail, is aligning those assets with the experience once that consumer hits a campaign landing page or your website. So by that, what do I mean? That if you're marketing a vehicle X and at a price of $199, and the consumer hits that landing page and it's vehicle A at $299, you have now broken that trust. And that relationship that you're looking to build to create a seamless experience from the first point of communication, you've broken it. So creating that string, creating that consistency is so important to building early relationships online. I'm going to go through here a couple of slides, right? Making sure the experience is consistent with your display advertising, with your message, your consistent theme across the board. And what's important as well is creating a mobile-enabled experience, whether it's on a smartphone or an iPad, or even on a traditional browser experience. And you'll see here on the screen, we're digging in, and this is the start of, once they're on your website, building more trust. So in this example, having an example where you're presenting both finance and lease options side by side. And what's different here, what's unique here, what's going above and beyond here from historically what dealers have done is actually providing information with real finance programs, with real rebates and incentives, dynamically presented based upon the vehicle and the settings and the controls configured by the dealer. So what's not new is someone that's assigned to update all rebates and incentives and pricing and financing details on a website. Think about the arduous process of doing that for every single vehicle on your site. So having the ability to dynamically present that, so as a consumer is going through and adjusting term or down payment, to have those programs based upon the lenders you do business with to dynamically present, you're now presenting content to a consumer that's rich, that's dynamic in content, all with the controls set by your dealership. And you go through the process. You think about bringing more of the F&I and sales process onto your website. And why is that so important? It's so important that if you expect to drive a more efficient, faster experience in your dealership, in your showroom, you've got to be able to bring on those components online. So filling out a credit application, being able to get a trade-in offer, filling out an appraisal form through your site, presenting an actual offer within the experience of your dealership. This is an interesting point about warranty and maintenance options. That I had a lot of good conversations with dealers about where does F&I fit into the online experience, and I see the F&I being a critical step in educating consumers. Think about how many millennials really know what a GAP or a vehicle service contract or a paintless dent repair program is. And here is your opportunity to differentiate yourself from the competition to be able to provide dynamic videos and content pictures and descriptions aligned with specific vehicles to educate that consumer. So as they come into your F&I department, and at that point, once they're in the showroom, they're in the F&I department, you present pricing and you present your menu structure and your options. They have a baseline of information around what those products are, as opposed to having to educate from the baseline. So you think about the example of using retargeting technology, very simple. Retargeting technology is the ability to cookie a user within their browser. In essence, dropping in a bit of code in the browser and tracking as that user goes to another website, which is in the ad network that you're participating in, and to be able to present that same vehicle and payment option the consumer was looking at, and transferring that to a virtual deal jacket on your site, taking a down deposit. So creating a full experience that's rich and robust that attracts how a millennial wants to be able to do business with a business. Interactive, dynamic, self-service. So as the consumer enters into the dealership, you think about the use of mobile technology, and I'll focus on tablet technology as one example, one good tactic a lot of dealers are using. An interesting stat that J.D. Power came out with about a year ago, that dealers that use iPad or tablet technology have a 51% higher SSI rating, sales satisfaction index, and the reason for that is very simple. The reason for that is using iPad technology creates a more professional, consistent, and transparent manner of presenting vehicle options, payment options, menu presentations, contracting as well, even moving into the service lane and scheduling. And where iPad technology is so powerful, whether that's used from your CRM or your DMS company or other platforms, what you're doing is that you're engaging technology. Dan mentioned this beforehand about how millennials are wed to their technology, whether it's a tablet or whether it's a watch or it's a smartphone. This is how they're absorbing information. This is how they're taking a message which prior generations have absorbed through a newspaper or a radio or a TV commercial, and they're absorbing information through handheld device technology. And if they walk into a dealership, and if they have an experience where they did online research through your website, they configured a vehicle, they have payment options associated with the vehicle, a trade-in offer, they fill out a credit application, the worst situation is they walk in and you hit the reset button to say, all right, let's start that deal. What are you interested in now, sir or ma'am? And at that point, they look at you to say, I just spent an hour and a half on your website, and I filled out A, B, and C. Why am I resetting that process? One of the biggest dissatisfiers of consumers' experiences within the new vehicle purchase process, and used vehicle purchase process as well. So using, again, dynamic iPad, tablet technology to be able to extend that experience from online to in-store. So in summary here, hopefully there are some good talking points and some tips you could take back. Some key themes that I'd resonate here. Number one is having a consistent online to in-store experience. Ensure that the message that you're delivering from the very point of your advertising is a consistent theme throughout the online into the showroom and showroom experience. The second is being able to create a platform where you're transparent with consumers, you're providing information, you're building a relationship and trust factor, all the while being able to have the controls to be able to maintain the profit margins and the selling processes that are so important to your overall dealership health. So with that said, I appreciate the time here. I know we've got about 5 or so minutes to answer some questions. If there's anything on the content that we've presented today or another topic, I'd be more than happy to answer those questions. So we'll give a couple of seconds here. You could enter those questions into the WebEx content on the right side of your screen. Okay. There's a question that came in on how do I control quality on trade-ins if offered through my site? So it's a good question. So there's many companies that offer technologies to do trade-in offers through your site. Black Book, for example, is one. There's others out in the market as well. And part of the guidance that we provide dealers is to be able to capture basic information in an appraisal form on your site. There's many different options. Some technologies enable the presentation of a payment option or a trade-in offer directly to the consumer. There are some scenarios where they say, please contact the dealership and come back in. Part of the recommendation that I've always said is, why force the consumer to be able to come into your dealership to get that trade-in offer? And again, it's about building that trust factor to be able to build an online relationship. So the dealership down the street who's offering an online trade-in offer, if you're not doing that, where does that put you in the competitive space? Okay. Another question that just came in, do we have access to any of this presentation information? So working with the AIADA, they'll be sending out a link to the recording of this content. And then my information's up on the screen as well if you have any specific questions related to the content. Okay, there's another question that just came up about payment options, about how do I control the banks and the payment options associated with that retailing flow that was, sorry, I'm summarizing here, the retailing flow within my site. So to answer that question, and again, there's multiple technology solutions in the marketplace that offer that dynamic presentation. Part of what we advise dealers and we talk about is that each dealer has their own relationships with indirect lenders, captives, credit unions, national banks, regional banks, and part of our recommendation is it's about testing, right? And it's about learning and understanding which programs are most attractive to attract the lead and to be able to get that consumer into the dealership showroom. So there are some dealers that elect to just present a captive program through their site. Some like to do a captive and a local credit union option as well. Really, it's a matter of testing, and it's about aligning what the best experience and the return to be able to increase the leads as well as the conversion rates to sales based upon that experience. Okay. We'll give a few more seconds here if there's any more questions that come in. So while we're waiting for any more questions that come in, I just wanted to thank the audience here for your time. I know we're heading into the Memorial Day weekend here, so just wanted to acknowledge all of our veterans that have made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. So I want to make sure we're busy as we're entering the very busy selling season in our industry. Did want to acknowledge all the veterans that have fought for our country. Okay, and I have not seen any other questions come in. So again, I thank everybody for your time here. Hopefully there are some valuable tips you're able to take back to your dealership and deploy. If you have any questions, you could reach out to me or AIADA. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the baton back to Dan. I know he had some important messages for the group.
Thank you very much, Jason. That was outstanding information. Again, this will be sent out before the end of the week, a link to this program, so you'll get the full deck that was presented today. We do have some exciting upcoming programs. Again, AutoTalk in these sessions are held the third Tuesday of every month. 2 sessions, one at 10 a.m. and the other one at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The next one will be June 16th. That'll be fraud liability and the shift that's going to take place in October. Is your dealership prepared for that upcoming change? That has a lot to do with the new smart credit card chip technology, and there's some liability changes as it relates to the new technology. That'll be put on by Wells Fargo. July 21st, please mark the calendar. This is such a big issue. Federated Insurance is going to put on an outstanding presentation on data compromise and cyber liability. It seems like every other day we hear about this in the news. Some type of business, either their data or there's been a cyber attack or their data has been compromised. How does that impact our business? What are we doing to protect ourselves? That'll be July 21st, and again, it'll be repeated twice. Once at 10 and the following one at 4 p.m. So again, I want to thank everybody for logging on today, for taking the time. If you have any suggestions on programming, please feel free to send them in. We'd love to hear from you. My email is barsond, that's BARSOND, @AIADA.org. So again, we'd love to have your feedback. We appreciate your time. Have a great weekend. I hope it's a tremendous selling opportunity for everybody on the phone. And we look forward to having your participation on a future program. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.